What if your kindness is the very reason people stop respecting you? Have you ever reached out with a genuine heart, only to be met with silence, entitlement, or even resentment? Maybe you stayed up late to help a friend meet a deadline, or you gave up your weekend to support a family member's plans. You didn't expect much in return, just a little acknowledgement, a little decency, but what you got instead was nothing. Or worse, a look that said, "Of course you did. That's just what you do." At some point, most of us feel this strange ache that our kindness is no longer appreciated but assumed. And that hurts, because you weren't giving to be taken for granted. You were giving from a place of sincerity. The Stoics understood this deeply. They never told us to stop being kind. In fact, Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." But what they also taught is this: kindness without wisdom is not a virtue, it's a liability. When you give without boundaries, you're not being noble, you're slowly erasing yourself. Let me tell you a story. There's a man I know, Caleb. He's the kind of guy who always says yes. Need help moving? Caleb's there. Car broke down? He's already calling a tow truck. Struggling at work? Caleb will stay late to help, even if he misses dinner with his kids. At first, everyone loves him, but over time people stop asking, they just expect. The moment he says no, people act offended. "What's wrong with you?" they ask. But maybe the real question is, what's wrong with a world that punishes boundaries? Caleb isn't weak, he's exhausted. And what he really needs isn't to give less, but to give smarter. Because here's the truth. Your kindness is sacred, but like any sacred thing, it needs protection. When you set boundaries, not harsh walls, but thoughtful limits, you protect your energy, your values, and your dignity. You turn kindness into something powerful, something intentional, something that demands respect without ever needing to ask for it. That's the path of the Stoic, to give without losing yourself, to love without being used, to show compassion without abandoning your own well-being. Michelle thought she was doing the right thing. Living with her aging mother-in-law in a quiet Ohio suburb, she made it her mission to care for the woman with patience and consistency. Every morning, Michelle cooked breakfast. Every afternoon, she scheduled medical appointments, picked up prescriptions, cleaned the house, and handled errands most people would ignore. It wasn't because anyone asked her to. She did it from a place of love, at least in the beginning. Then one evening, Michelle came down with a high fever. She stayed in bed, barely able to sit up. Dinner didn't get made. The kitchen lights stayed off. And her mother-in-law's reaction? She stormed into the bedroom and said, "You couldn't even make a simple meal?" That moment hit Michelle harder than the fever ever could. Her kindness, once appreciated, had silently turned into an expectation. And this is where so many of us go wrong. We think that the more we do, the more we'll be appreciated. But life, people, don't always work that way. When kindness becomes routine without boundaries, it stops being seen as a gift and starts being seen as a duty. The Stoics warned us about this. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, don't expect others to recognize your virtue. Let it be enough that you live it. Kindness, when it's real, must come from within, but it must also be protected. Because without boundaries, even the purest generosity will eventually be taken for granted. I've seen it happen too many times, not just in families, but in workplaces, friendships, even marriages. You give, and one day they stop saying thank you. Then they start asking why you're not doing more. But here's the truth. When you let people treat your kindness like it's automatic, they'll forget it was ever a choice. And that forgetfulness breeds entitlement, not because people are evil, but because they're human. And humans adapt quickly to comfort. That's why you have to be the one who defines your limits. There's nothing unkind about saying, "I can't today." There's nothing selfish about protecting your energy. In fact, the only way your kindness retains its meaning is if people remember that it comes from your will, not their expectation. There's a fine line between being kind and becoming someone who never says no. And that line often gets blurred when we confuse self-worth with approval. Take the story of Andrew, a senior at a university in North Carolina. Bright, responsible, always willing to lend a hand. Whenever a classmate needed help reworking a group presentation or editing an essay, Andrew showed up. No hesitation, no complaint. He believed that being helpful meant being reliable, and that reliability meant always saying yes. But during his final semester, Andrew found himself drowning in his thesis. Late nights turned into early mornings. His calendar was packed, his energy depleted. So when a friend asked for last-minute help preparing a class pitch, Andrew finally said, "I can't this time." It wasn't rude. It wasn't harsh. It was honest. Yet the reaction surprised him. "You've changed," his friend said. "You're not as easy to talk to anymore." That simple no, spoken out of necessity, was met not with understanding, but with guilt. And suddenly, Andrew began to question himself. Was I wrong to protect my time? Was I being selfish? This is where Stoic philosophy offers clarity. Marcus Aurelius reminded us to act in accordance with nature, and that includes our own nature. If we constantly abandon our needs to meet the demands of others, we become resentful, not generous. That's not kindness. It's self-erasure dressed up in good intentions. True generosity requires discernment. When you say yes to everything, your kindness loses weight. It becomes diluted, expected. But when you choose where and how to give, your yes carries meaning. It reflects conscious intent, not social pressure. I believe kindness should never cost you your clarity. Saying no isn't a betrayal of your values. It's a reflection of them. It says, I care enough about what I offer that I don't give it blindly. That kind of kindness, measured, thoughtful, rooted in purpose, commands more respect than 1,000 unthinking favors ever could. So next time you feel that internal conflict rising, the desire to help battling the quiet voice that says, not today, pause. Listen to that voice. It's not selfish, it's wise. And wisdom, as the Stoics knew well, is what transforms action into virtue. Ryan was always the agreeable one in his relationship. He didn't mind letting his girlfriend choose the restaurant, the weekend plans, even the pace of their conversations. When she criticized him, sometimes harshly, he swallowed his words, told himself she was just stressed, and tried harder to make things work. From the outside, he seemed like the ideal partner, patient, thoughtful, willing to compromise. But on the inside, he was quietly disappearing. What started as kindness slowly became a mask. Ryan wasn't being accommodating out of love. He was afraid. Afraid that if he said no, if he spoke up, if he set even the softest boundary, she might leave. So he gave more and more and more, until he wasn't sure what he actually wanted anymore. His kindness wasn't a reflection of self-respect. It was a shield for his insecurity. And this isn't just Ryan's story, it's a pattern many of us fall into, especially when we've been taught that love must be earned through sacrifice. But here's the truth. Kindness born from fear is not kindness. It's survival. It's the quiet bargain we make when we don't believe we're enough as we are. The Stoics, particularly Epictetus, were clear about this. You must never place your peace in the hands of another. If your actions are driven by the need to be accepted, you've already handed over your freedom. Real kindness, the kind that holds meaning and dignity, comes from strength, not from fear of abandonment. I've learned this the hard way. In my own life, I've said yes when I wanted to say no, stayed quiet when I needed to speak up, all because I didn't want to lose someone. But the more I silenced myself, the more I lost touch with who I was. Eventually, I realized, if someone only loves me when I have no boundaries, that isn't love. That's control. Being kind doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean shrinking to fit someone else's expectations. Kindness has to include you. It has to make room for your voice, your needs, your truth. If not, it's just performance, a hollow version of love that empties you over time. So if you find yourself constantly giving just to keep someone around, pause. Ask yourself, is this love or is this fear? Because real love can handle your honesty, and real kindness never asks you to vanish to be worthy. Laura ran a small bakery in a quiet Oregon town. She wasn't just known for her fresh sourdough or cinnamon rolls. She was known for her generosity. When a neighbor was short on cash, Laura let them take bread and pay later. When another fell behind on bills, she extended credit without hesitation, trusting they'd make it right. Over time, her kindness became part of the neighborhood's rhythm. People smiled at her on the street, praised her as the heart of the block. And Laura believed she was building a community grounded in trust. But everything shifted the day she finally said no. One of her regulars asked to take a large order on credit, but Laura had just paid rent, stocked up on supplies, and was barely covering costs. Politely, she declined and explained she couldn't afford to extend credit that week. The neighbor's smile faded. The next morning, Laura noticed something different. No greetings, no waves. Just cold glances and quiet whispers. The warmth disappeared the moment the free favors did. That moment forced her to reflect. Had they respected her or just liked what she gave them? The Stoics teach that kindness should never be used to manipulate or maintain affection. As Marcus Aurelius put it, do not waste time wondering what a good person should be. Be one. But that goodness, your kindness, must stem from strength, not fear. It should never become currency to buy acceptance or avoid rejection. I've learned and seen through others that the most dangerous trap is not being unkind. It's using kindness to secure belonging. When we give just to stay needed, we lose our clarity. We start shaping ourselves around others' comfort instead of our own conscience. And that's when our kindness stops being authentic and starts becoming performance. Laura didn't owe anyone endless giving. Her decision to set limits wasn't a betrayal of her generosity. It was the moment she honored it. She stopped giving out of pressure and started giving from principle. The truth is, the people who only stand beside you when you say yes are not your people. Real connection is built on mutual respect, not silent expectation. And real kindness that earns respect, comes from self-respect first. So if you're constantly giving just to keep relationships warm, ask yourself, am I being kind or am I afraid of what will happen if I stop? Because love, loyalty, and respect that vanish when you draw a line were never solid to begin with. They were borrowed warmth, never truly yours. Eric was the kind of colleague everyone relied on. He worked as a technician at a mid-sized company in Colorado. Quiet, dependable, never the type to make a fuss. Whenever something broke, whether it was part of his job or not, Eric would be the first to show up with a toolkit and a solution. Printer jam? He'd fix it. Network glitch? He'd stay after hours. He didn't complain, didn't expect recognition. To him, helping was simply the right thing to do, but over time something changed. His kindness stopped feeling like a gift and started feeling like an obligation. People stopped asking, they just assumed. And one Friday afternoon, when Eric declined to stay late because he promised to take his daughter to her soccer game, the reaction was immediate. A coworker muttered, "Really? That's not like you." Another said, "We count on you for this stuff." That's when it hit him. His kindness had been quietly rebranded as duty. The truth is, when you don't define your limits, others will define them for you, and the longer you stay silent, the deeper those expectations are rooted. What was once generosity becomes the baseline, and the moment you try to step back, you are met with confusion, or worse, resentment. The Stoics understood this dynamic well. Seneca warned, "A benefit is only truly a benefit when given freely. The moment it is expected, it loses its virtue." In other words, kindness only holds value when it comes from choice, not pressure. I've seen this play out in many lives, including my own. We're taught that being dependable means being endlessly available, but that isn't reliability, it's erosion. Because when people stop seeing your kindness as a conscious act, they stop respecting its cost. Eric didn't fail his coworkers that day. He reminded them and himself that his time, his presence, and his effort are not limitless. That moment of saying no wasn't selfish, it was honest. And sometimes honesty is the most respectful thing you can offer. So if you've been the go-to person for too long, ask yourself, are you giving or are you being taken for granted? Because if your kindness no longer feels like kindness, it may be time to step back and reestablish your boundaries. Not to punish others, but to protect the part of you that gives so willingly. Daniel worked in IT for a mid-sized firm in Seattle. He was thoughtful, reliable, and introverted by nature, someone who thrived in calm, one-on-one interactions rather than crowds. But in a workplace where extroversion was seen as a mark of team spirit, Daniel felt a subtle pressure to fit in. Every time a company happy hour came up, or a weekend barbecue, or someone's birthday lunch, he said yes, even when his body said no. He didn't want to be seen as cold, distant, or, worse, antisocial. So he showed up, smiled, made small talk, laughed at jokes that didn't land, and then he went home feeling drained for days. He wasn't being fake, he was being kind, or at least that's what he told himself. But over time, that kindness came with a kist. He started losing touch with his own rhythms. Those quiet evenings that once recharged him now felt guilty, as if he were hiding from the group. He found himself saying yes, not out of genuine interest, but from a fear of being misunderstood. That's when he realized his kindness had started to come at the expense of his own authenticity. This is more common than we admit. In a world that celebrates visibility and constant connection, those who value solitude often feel the need to overextend themselves just to avoid judgment. But kindness isn't about abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable. It's about bringing your whole self to the table, with boundaries, with awareness, with respect for your natural wiring. The Stoics taught that to live with integrity means to live in alignment with your nature. Marcus Aurelius didn't say, "Be what the world wants." He said, "If it is not right, do not do it." If it is not true, do not say it. And I'd add, if it is not you, don't pretend it is. Daniel didn't need to prove his warmth by forcing himself into social roles that depleted him. True kindness isn't loud. It isn't measured in how often you say yes. It's measured in how sincerely you show up, on your terms, in your own way. So if you're someone who feels torn between being social enough and staying true to who you are, remember this. You don't owe anyone your exhaustion. You owe them your honesty. Let your kindness reflect your truth, not your fear. The people who value you won't need you to pretend. Sophie had always been the dependable one in her friend group. A talented freelance graphic designer based in California, she built her career through dedication and creativity. And whenever her friends needed a flyer tweaked, a resume polished, or a logo refreshed, Sophie was there. No invoice, no strings attached. She believed that offering her time and skill was a way to stay connected, to be generous, to show support. But that quiet generosity slowly turned into an unspoken contract, one she never agreed to. One week, Sophie was juggling multiple deadlines for paying clients. She barely had time to sleep, let alone spare a few hours for casual favors. So when a friend reached out asking for another free revision on a podcast cover, Sophie gently declined. She apologized, explained the workload, and promised to circle back when she had time. But the reaction surprised her. "Wow," the friend said, "you've really changed." It wasn't said in gratitude, it was said in disappointment, almost like she'd broken a deal she never signed. And that's the trap. When we give without boundaries, people stop seeing our kindness as a gift and start treating it as an obligation. The moment we try to step back, we're not met with understanding, we're met with resentment. The Stoics would call this a loss of personal agency. Epictetus reminded us, never depend on the admiration of others. There is no strength in it. When your kindness becomes a strategy to maintain relationships, it's no longer rooted in virtue, it's rooted in fear. And fear-based kindness is fragile. What Sophie learned, and what many of us eventually face, is that mature kindness must include clarity. Saying yes doesn't mean saying yes forever. True generosity has edges. It says, I care enough to help, but I also care enough about myself to draw the line. I've seen this in my own life. The first few times you give freely, it's appreciated. But if you keep giving without pause, people start organizing their lives around your sacrifice. And before long, you're not helping anymore. You're managing expectations you didn't agree to. So here's the truth. Kindness is not a lifetime subscription. It's a conscious decision, one that needs to be revisited, rebalanced, and sometimes redefined. Because if you don't set your own limits, others will write them for you. Claire taught second grade in a small town in Pennsylvania. She wasn't just a teacher. She was the kind of person who noticed the quiet needs no one else saw. When a child came to school without a backpack, Claire quietly bought one. When notebooks ran out mid-semester, she restocked them. She never made announcements, never expected a thank you. Her kindness was quiet, personal, and consistent. But one year, her own circumstances shifted. Rising costs, unexpected family expenses. Suddenly, Claire couldn't keep covering classroom supplies out of her own pocket. She hoped the school or parents might step in, even just a little. Instead, what she received was not concern, but disappointment. A few parents began murmuring, she used to do more, as if generosity had been part of her job description. It's in these moments we face a painful truth. When kindness becomes invisible, its absence becomes loud. The Stoics warned us not to place our worth in the hands of other people. Marcus Aurelius wrote, just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter. And that's the heart of this lesson. Your kindness does not lose its value just because it wasn't applauded. It doesn't stop being real just because it went unnoticed. The integrity of a kind act lies not in its recognition, but in its intention. I think we all reach a point where we wonder, does it matter if no one sees what I'm doing? And the answer, especially from a Stoic lens, is yes, because you saw it, because your actions aligned with who you are. That's enough. That's everything. Claire wasn't less kind because she could no longer give. She wasn't less noble because others failed to appreciate what she had done. If anything, her quiet efforts over the years revealed a deeper truth. The most meaningful acts are the ones we choose when no one is watching. We live in a culture that often equates value with visibility, but real character, real goodness, is forged in silence. The moment we tie our generosity to acknowledgement, we risk corrupting it. But when we give from principle, not performance, we tap into something unshakable. So if you're giving quietly, loving patiently, helping without credit, keep going. Let your kindness be your character, not your currency. You don't have to bend yourself in every direction just to be seen as good. You don't have to say yes to everything, be endlessly available, or prove your kindness by draining your energy. Because true kindness, lasting kindness, is not about being everything to everyone. It's about being anchored in who you are. This is the quiet power of Stoic philosophy. It doesn't ask us to give up compassion. On the contrary, it calls us to elevate it, to give with clarity, to serve without losing ourselves, to love without abandoning our own needs. Marcus Aurelius didn't write about pleasing the crowd. He wrote about living in alignment with your inner reason, with your nature, with what's just. And that's the paradox we often forget. Boundaries don't make your kindness smaller. They make it stronger. When you know where you end and where someone else begins, you can give without resentment. You can show up without self-erasure. You can say yes with joy because you also have the strength to say no with peace. I've seen too many people, myself included, confuse kindness with compliance. We think that by sacrificing ourselves, we're being noble. But over time, we grow tired, bitter, disconnected. That's not kindness. That's quiet self-abandonment dressed up as virtue. The Stoics teach us to live deliberately, to choose our actions, to ask, am I doing this from strength or from fear? That question alone can reshape your life. It can show you where your kindness has become obligation, where your generosity has turned into guilt, and where your good intentions need firmer ground. Because kindness without wisdom becomes weakness, but kindness with wisdom, that's a force no one can exploit and no hardship can extinguish. So today, give yourself permission to be kind with boundaries, to protect your peace as fiercely as you protect others, to say yes because you mean it, not because you're afraid of what will happen if you don't. And if this message resonates with you, if it gave you a moment of clarity, take a second to like this video and share it with someone who needs that same reminder. And don't forget to subscribe for more Stoic reflections that help you lead with heart, strength, and unwavering self-respect. Because kindness isn't about how much you give, it's about how deeply you stay true while giving it.